Early in the Trump administration, Elliot Broidy, who was a longtime fundraiser for Trump, raised money for the campaign, raised money for the inaugural committee, and then became a fundraiser for the RNC. After that, was in communication with a Moscow and London-based lawyer to develop a plan that would get sanctions lifted from a Russian gas company called Novatek. Novatek was sanctioned in 2014 as part of the Obama administration's pushback against Russia for the annexation of Crimea. The plan that Elliot Broidy came up with was a 2-year proposal that said that for a cost of $26 million, he would try to get sanctions lifted off of this Russian gas company. The way he would go about doing it is itself instructive. He lists a number of members of Congress, Ed Royce, Dana Rohrabacher, and others that he would set up meetings with. He would spend $1.8 million on think tank experts. Let that sink in for a second. These are ostensibly independent intellectuals who work for think tanks who are helping to establish the kind of the intellectual infrastructure that makes up U.S. foreign and domestic policy. And Broidy's just simply telling this Russian gas company that for $1.5 million, I can get them to say that you're a company that should not have sanctions on them, and that would be a good foreign policy move for the United States. About twice that amount was earmarked towards lobbyists, a similar amount earmarked towards various consultants. There was several $1 million that was going to go towards conferences and other expenses, meetings with the other members of the National Security Council, the White House, and then continuing to push for hearings in Congress, planting favorable articles and op-eds. And over a period of then 2 years, the idea would be that you would gradually soften up the ground here in Washington, and it would be enough to lift sanctions. We reached out to Elliot Broidy for a comment about this, and he said that the deal didn't go through for a number of reasons, one of which was that he got legal advice that if he went through with this, he would have to register as a foreign agent, which is a rather onerous requirement. You have to report to the government every contact that you have made on behalf of a foreign government. And so he's not alone in not wanting to register as a foreign agent, and a lot of people in the past have turned down business when they have been told by their lawyers that no, this would require you to register if you did. Interestingly, he also said that one of the reasons he turned it down is that the geopolitical situation changed. When these conversations were first going on, it appeared to Broidy and others that the Trump administration was going to take a much softer approach toward Russia, which meant business opportunities, which meant opportunities to lobby for Russian companies that wanted sanctions lifted. And key to this, in the documents that we obtained, is that it would then allow investment bankers and other brokers to earn pieces of future deals. Once sanctions are lifted from this gas company, it's going to start striking deals with companies that it couldn't strike deals with in the past. And in order to arrange those deals, Broidy was proposing that he would get a cut of each one of those deals up to a certain hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. Broidy says he eventually realized the soft approach that he thought was going to be taken towards Russia wasn't going to happen. And part of it was a result of the Mueller investigation and kind of the Trump-Russia hysteria that developed around it and that fueled it, meant that it was very unlikely that the president was going to be able to move on this issue. And it was very clear that Broidy's influence lay with the president and not with Congress. In fact, at one point, the Moscow-based lawyer writes to Broidy after John McCain introduces a bill or starts talking about pushing a bill that would require sanctions on Russian firms and take the sanctions ball out of Trump's hands, writes to Broidy and says, this looks like a problem for us. The client is concerned. Broidy says, not a game changer. We need to lobby McCain and others to water down or kill this legislation. It should be fine. We can push forward. Ultimately, he clearly decided that there wasn't enough to go there. I talked to another source who was involved in this, and the way he explained it was too high. The risk was too high and the reward was too low. And I said, well, this is $26 million. That seems like a pretty significant reward. But as he explained, most of that money is going right back out the door. It's not as if you take the $26 million and you just pocket it for yourself. And he said the real reward here was in the little slice that you take of these hundreds of millions of dollars of deals that are going to happen after sanctions are lifted. And if you genuinely feel that the geopolitical circumstances are such that you're not going to succeed in getting sanctions lifted, then you're just wasting your time for what in Washington ends up being a pittance, a couple $100,000 a month. And so why take the reputational hit? Why take the risk? Why register as a foreign agent when it's unlikely that you're going to succeed? A little bit of context on who Elliot Broidy is and why this person matters. Aside from being a major fundraiser and a close ally of Donald Trump, you've possibly seen him in the news for his first connection to the Playboy Playmate that he apparently impregnated and then reached a $1.6 million settlement through his attorney, Michael Cohen. He's one of 3 clients, and the others being Sean Hannity and Trump. But the other story that he's been involved in that we've talked about here is with George Nader, who was convicted here of child porn, also spent some time in prison in Eastern Europe for pedophilia, and in between that has been kind of a fixer for the U.S. and Middle East foreign policy circuit. He's led one of these stranger lives that you can concoct in this very strange journey that has been the Mueller investigation. Nader was an agent of the United Arab Emirates, and he was the connection between Broidy and the UAE. He funneled several $1 million over to Broidy as part of this anti-Qatar influence campaign that eventually went to fund a couple of conferences, or a conference here in Washington, D.C. that was tilted against Qatar, part of what led up to the Gulf crisis, which was the UAE and Saudi Arabia blockading Qatar over disputes that we really don't need to get into. Nader has come under Mueller's gaze because he helped set up a meeting in the Seychelles, which is an island that is heavily dominated by the UAE, where UAE officials met with Eric Prince, who is the brother of Betsy DeVos and somebody who's very close to Trump, as well as Russian officials. This is a meeting that folks had originally denied it happened, and then Prince eventually admitted, yeah, I had a beer with this guy. Now it has ballooned into this meeting where there seems to have been a huge number of people at it, and it has become a focal point for Mueller, whether or not it ended up being the kind of back channel to Russia that some suspected it was or not. Either way, it has become a focal point of the Mueller investigation, and Nader, Broidy's associate, was at the center of that gathering.
I mean, one of the many things that troubles me about this is that he's also a Trump fundraiser and an RNC fundraiser. So just like the NRA, you have these people bringing all this foreign money in and then spending their money on the culture war here.
Right.
Okay, so Elliot Broidy and George Nader worked together to basically secretly, maybe I shouldn't say work as foreign agents, but they spent foreign money to influence American policy here and tried to cover their tracks.
Right. What we know about, Friends of the New York Times reported that the conference was funded by UAE money.
Anti-Qatar conference.
Anti-Qatar conference, and we at the Intercept have documents that confirm that to be the case. And I don't think that the conferences deny it necessarily anymore. They have policies that they don't take foreign money, and they say, well, we didn't take foreign money, we took Elliot Broidy's money. But Elliot Broidy has now said that that money came originally from the United Arab Emirates. And so then the question is, well, does that count as lobbying? Or is it just supporting educational institutions? You don't have to register to fund a wing of a hospital. And so if you're saying, well, this is just cultural enrichment, this conference, it wasn't lobbying. And so that's why there are lawyers who are experts in FARA, Foreign Agent Registration Act, who will tell you, you give them your scope of work that you intend to do, and they give you advice on whether or not you need to register under FARA. And in this case, we got the email between Elliot Broidy and the attorney for the Russian contract, and he said, here's what I would plan to do. And the lawyer wrote back, it's quite possible that you have already done work that should have been registered under FARA, just in the communications that you've had so far. But given the scope of this work, I don't see a way that you don't end up having to register here. And he concludes it by saying, I'm sorry, I know this wasn't the answer you were hoping for, but it's the best that I can do for you.
Okay, so
And so to his credit, he was clearly communicating with and getting advice from a lawyer who had integrity rather than one who was just going to say, whatever you want to do.
right, right. And so either because Trump didn't seem to be the unitary executive that he thought, and
Or a combination of all of them.
okay,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
all right. So just to make sure people can piece it all together, what was Broidy's role in helping to bring about the Qatar blockade?
So Broidy helped lead and influence a campaign here in Washington that was designed to hurt the image of Qatar and soften the ground for that blockade.
And so he thought, with this Russian oil company, now I can make another big chunk of money. In the same way, he thought, basically, I take all this foreign money and then I basically filter it to American actors. They're the ones who are foreign agents, not me, because all I did was filter the money and basically hide
Yeah, I guess his thinking was right. I'm a connector here. I'm the guy that's going to come up with the plan. He said he would help coordinate it, give some strategic guidance, but he's not going to set up the meetings with the members of Congress. He's not going to be in the meetings. He's not doing the lobbying. That appeared not to be sufficient for the lawyer, who was like, well, this is still too close to foreign agent work.
But it's not that different from what he did with Qatar, and no one's coming after it.
Well, I don't know what he did in the way of setting up meetings with. He actually met. We do know that he met with Trump to push the UAE's agenda to fire Tillerson. We know that for a fact. But we don't know what other meetings he set up with members of Congress. We do know that what he called socialized